Good morning. Happy Friday. Um, I am having a mellow Friday in my office today, and I was thinking about so often people ask me, I want to write a book. How do I write a book? Where should I write a book? And so I always love to share what I've learned in the 12 years I've been a professional speaker. And in the 10 years since I wrote my first book, I wanted to share with you why I wrote a book, how I wrote a book, and how and why maybe you should write a book. I think that today, because we can self-publish, many people are writing books. And yes, certainly you can use AI and have them write your book. But once you release it and attach your name to it, remember that it is out in the world. And I've been a contributor to 3 books. I don't have any of those in front of me, but I have the books that I've written. And what I wanted to share is writing is hard for me. When I have a learning difference, writing and making my writing is fluid and not as a run-on sentence is challenging. So I usually always use a partner to help coach me, help edit me, talk out. I'm a talkable writer, so I'll take my phone and I'll talk a chapter, and then I'll email it to myself and edit it or share it with a writing coach. Tell me what you're seeing, what you're not seeing, because I always see what I think I want to say, not always what I am saying. So I've been speaking since, I don't know, maybe 2000, speaking in the faith community, speaking to middle schoolers, high school kids, senior high, women's ministry, women's retreats. But when I started to expand and realize in owning a gym, people are like, you're a great coach. Like, teach us, you should speak. Maybe you could do it for a corporate, in a corporate setting. And so I've done it for corporations, organizations, and associations. But I had to figure out, what is it I wanted to teach people? So it's great to have a great story, but a great story doesn't get you paid. That's public speaking. And there's people that will always listen to your story, no matter how fascinating, amazing, tragic. There's always going to be listeners. But to make a living as a speaker, you have to get clear on what you're actually teaching and the value in the listener much more than the value in your story. I was chatting with someone yesterday, and I was saying, as much as you have brilliant stories to share, what makes you excellent is actually the beauty in how you listen to other people's stories, because people care about their story, their business, their success financially, personally, professionally. And so it's in our listening with our wisdom and experience of our own story that helps people see the value in us. So I'm going to show you today what each of my books that I wrote and why I wrote it. So my first book that I wrote was really kind of me being sarcastic when so many people told me, write a book, you should write a book. And I was like, I hate writing. I don't know how to spell. Please don't make me write a book. I don't want to write a book. But I was speaking at rotaries and chambers, and I would speak for free. And back then I really did speak for free. And somebody said, write a book. Just write a book, Annie, write a book. And I was like, man, I cannot write a book. But what I realized is my sarcastic response was, no, you write a book. Why don't you write a book? You probably have stories and lessons and dreams that you could share. So this first book, I'm going to show you a little bit the inside, is like questions and quotes and short stories for you to add on to. So I wrote it with the intention of it being an inspirational journal to prompt you. What's your story? What's your dream? What are your lessons? What do you want to leave behind? But then, since I wrote it, a couple of things have happened. One, it's been used for all sorts of cool things. So people have written to me and said, Annie, we brought your book on date night, and we started to have deeper, richer conversations rather than just to-do lists together. Oh, I love that. I love when you create something and it's used for good and there's a tool inside of it. So that was my first email I got after this. This was written and released in 2015. So I just made a list of questions, quotes, and short stories, and then brought them to be edited, formatted, put together in a book. And if you don't have a book, it's a great place to start. Just have some takeaway. Also a place to share your information if people like your philosophies, your thoughts, and can contact you for more speaking, more coaching, consulting, whatever work you do. I am a speaker primarily, but I do some training. I do some retreats, some consulting with organizations, some coaching with individuals, and that has expanded over the years. But I wrote this for that reason, for people to share their own stories. So the first Mine was to inspire you to write a story. The first response was that somebody used it for date night. A second powerful response I got about it was a woman had a teenage son and he didn't talk much. So she took my book, answered question on page 4, put it on his bed, said, will you answer 5? And for a year, her and her teenage son passed the book back and forth, him leaving it on her bed, her leaving it on his. And a year later, she wrote me and said, he still doesn't talk much, but I know more about him and he knows more about me, because we used your book as a tool. And then somebody used this to interview her sister, who was in hospice and getting ready to pass away. And so she asked her all these questions. And not only did she learn about her sister, but she was able to give this gift to her sister's adult children after her sister passed. And I thought, what a beautiful way to use this book. So I have used this book to interview lots of people, to document stories from family and friends over the years, as a great tool. But as my life has evolved, I decided that I really wanted a new cover. I wanted some new formatting. I moved kind of from the butterfly to the pineapple. And so a couple of years ago now, I think I reformatted the cover, but it's the same book, a little updated, a little edited, but just a little fresh cover. So this is my first book that came out in 2015 and really is not a novel. It's an inspirational journal to get you to use it to write your story or share your lessons. The second book I had been writing for a long time. So I was writing Dumpster to Dynasty. It was about growing up in a physical dumpster, in that we lived in a hoarding house with 6 brothers and sisters and a single mom, a financial dumpster where we were in such poverty that at times we were literally eating out of dumpsters, and an emotional dumpster where there was chaos and sadness and disruption all the time. And so I was writing this book, Dumpster to Dynasty, because today, back then, this was in 2015, after I released that book, I started writing this. And I met, I've been writing longer than that, just collecting stories, but I met a publisher with Wise Inc. And I was speaking at a conference and she said, you got to write a book. And I said, oh, I'm writing Dumpster to Dynasty. And she said, what's it about? And I said, it's really my memoir of how poverty of spirit, financially, emotionally, mentally, physically, every poverty of all 7 areas of health, of relationships, of career, all of that has turned into dynasty of generosity and abundance and belief in abundance and belief in what I can receive, but also what I can give. And she said, don't write that. And I said, tell me more. And she said, teach us, if we are stuck in poverty of spirit, if we are stuck in a dumpster of a disruption in our life or a dysfunctional family or whatever our story is, how do we rise to a dynasty life? What does that look like? And so she said, Annie, what you have done is broken the cycles and rewritten the stories to create this legacy life where people can follow your example and not let their excuses, their struggles define them. I also want to say, sometimes people look at me and they think it's so easy for you. I've been threatened to be sued twice. I've overcome much adversity in order to get here professionally and personally. But I do feel very clearly that I have a call on my life to do this work. And so I just keep going. Just keep going. If people vote against me, just keep going if you think I'm silly. But this became Be the Exception. And this book was released in March. Actually, my release party, my launch party was on my birthday in March of 2016. And it was such a celebration of many, many years of getting to, so how old was I in 2016? 48, maybe? Yeah, I think 48. 48 in 2016. No. Yeah? Yes. 48 years old, of 48 years of life experience and overcoming and adversity and haters and lovers. And I was so moved, so deeply moved by my launch party and all that showed up and that flew in and that celebrated this launch of this book. It really felt like giving birth. It was part of my heart and soul. It was stories. It was heartbreak. It was overcoming. It was hope in the midst of adversity. And this book has been this brilliant light of a tool to go out into the world that has helped so many people through death of a loved one, through a divorce, through getting laid off from a job, that they too can choose to be the exception, or coming out of a dysfunctional family and saying, hey, I'm not going to be an addict. I'm not going to let mental illness define me or addiction define me. I'm going to break the cycles. I'm going to rewrite the stories. I'm going to become who I am capable and meant to be, not based on where I came from, but based on where I'm going. And so Be the Exception really for me, is my brilliant work is an extraordinary journey, story, message of how to not do more, but to be more, how to not believe the stories and the lies and the labels that people try to put on you, but how to rewrite them to be brilliant and serve you and inspire you. And so when this book came out in 2016, it was emotional for me. It was exciting. It was like giving birth to a lifelong baby, hatching and letting it soar. And really the symbol was the butterfly, because it was about transformation. It was about, how do you get from where you are to where you want to be? How do you show your brilliance through all the messy parts? And what I love is that when I speak, so often people say to me, oh my gosh, Annie, I love that book. I'm a butterfly. I'm a butterfly. So that was very much my symbol. I love the brilliant blue, which is the color of trust, the bright orange, which is the color of happiness. It was me evolving. And in 2017, this won a national award in the category of self-help, the Ben Franklin Award. It has been recognized on Amazon as well, but the Ben Franklin Award is very specific, where they're looking at many books, reading many books, scrutinizing many books, and choosing this. And it got the gold medal, which was really exciting. And really, when this book came out in 2016, right before, it really launched my speaking career. So I had been getting paid to speak since 2014, but 2016, when people really realized Annie not only has credibility, has owned businesses, has climbed the corporate ladder, has led a direct sales team, has been in the franchise world, but she has content. So not just credibility, but content. And this content then was recognized by many other people. And they said, Annie, teach us more on how to be the exception. So this book, when it evolved, gave wings and spirit to my professional speaking, where I was able to charge more and to speak more. And what happened after this book came out, and this is why I like to teach new speakers, is build something that can be built on. So I was contacted by an executive at Comcast, and they said, Annie, can you teach our leadership team that all manage anywhere from 200 to 600 people how to be the exception? Don't just give us the book, which we want, but show us how. And so this came to be, and this is the leadership guide to how to be the exception. So it's a 27-page workbook that we go through and we work through. Ideally, I wrote it to do as a 3-day retreat, because it is a lot of content and it's a lot of application. And so in writing it, what I realized is I needed space, but I have been able to do it in 3 hours. We touch on everything. We can't dive as deep. I've been able to do it in a 1-day training, but I really love the retreat piece of this. And when I get to do a leadership retreat and really spend a couple of days with people diving into what does that look like and letting them talk about how they can apply it in their workplace. So this book led to this workbook, and that was my second book. And then because Be the Exception was written, and when I wrote this book, I'm a Christian, I'm a woman of faith. It's a big part of who I am. It leads my decisions. Churches where I really started speaking started coming to me and saying, Annie, why isn't this book Christian? And really my belief about that was that all people deserved the opportunity to be the exception, to rewrite those stories, break those cycles, and knowing that if they did that personally, it would affect their workplace. It would affect their organization if they were a leader or an owner, but it would affect them personally, and they would show up better. They would show up freer, more joyful, more happy. But churches were saying, hey, we still want you to come back. Don't forget about us as you climb the world of speaking to organizations and corporations. And so they asked me to write a Bible study to go with the 7 keys. So taking the 7 from Be the Exception and applying them and saying, what does God say about them? And I really didn't want to be honest with you, because again, I don't think of myself as a writer. So I was like, oh, I can't do it. I don't have time. And they said, we'll buy 800 copies if you write this book. And so I said, okay, fine, I'll get to writing. And so I went back through the 7 ways of being, and I went back through the scripture, which I've been studying for 25 years, and said, God, what are you saying about these ways of being? And how can I show people who you say they are, not who the world does, not who their childhood does, not even who their organization does, but who they are individually. And so I wrote Be the Exception Bible Study. And every of the 7 chapters starts with asking you to sit and to listen to 2 songs. I'm a big believer in music is healing, but it's also wisdom and calming and clarity. And so I recommend 2 songs to you to start a chapter. And then we work through, be honest. And what does God say about truth and about honesty and about who you are? And so this is a Bible study that can be done as a standalone. These can be done as companion guides. Some people use this as a team leader meetings, leading all their meetings for 7 weeks or 7 months. where they start with the chapter and they talk about it. Some people do it as a book club. Really, each chapter has application at the end and questions. So it's a great book club. It's great individually or as a team build. This as well can be done individually or as a Bible study. These two together kind of give you the application and the scripture that go together to help you be the exception. So this was my third book that came out, and I'm grateful and blessed that I have sold thousands and thousands of this to churches, to individuals, and I'm just grateful for the support on that. So that's the next book. The next book is kind of a silly book, but I do sell lots of them. So this book came to be because I do YouTube videos, and people sometimes find me, and there was a company celebrating their 100th anniversary. And a lot of people talk about gratitude, right? Like, be grateful, end your day with the 3 things you're grateful for. In the morning, read those 3 things and you'll feel better. But what I realize is that gratitude's all about, what did I get? I had a job. I got money. I have a house to live in. I have food. I. And it's okay to be about yourself. In fact, I teach so much how important it is to spend time in self-care, and that it's never selfish, it's self-full. But when it's all about I, and unfortunately, my husband and I have been talking a lot about this lately, is that entitlement of I deserve and I should get and I leaves you really quite empty and depleted. There's an entitlement, there's a selfishness, there's a negativity, and most people that feel entitled never actually arrive at happiness. But those people that live with a generous spirit, with a gracious and generous spirit, then instead of thinking so much about themselves, think about, how can I contribute? How can I give? How can I be generous? Generous of spirit, generous of smile, generous of money, generous of time. They live the most joyful life. So the reason I did a video about that and how I believe a grateful life is a good life, but a generous life is a great life. And a grand life is a life that's always learning, always expanding. What else can I learn? Who else can I include? Growing your friend circle. So this book only gives you directions on the first page, and the rest of the pages are asking you, what did you do what are you grateful for, and how is that good? What did you do generously today, and how is that great? And how did you grow today? Whether it's your friend circle or reading a book or watching a podcast or listening to a podcast or watching a video. So this book is a blank book with inspiration to encourage you to start a gratitude journal and then move on from that, from gratitude to generosity and to growth of mindset and learning. So that is my fourth book. Yes, fourth book. And then somebody called me a pineapple. I love the pineapple principle. And I love the poem, Stand Up Straight, where be a pineapple, stand up straight, wear a crown, be sweet on the inside. And people talk about pineapples are pokey on the outside, but I like to say this is a simple symbol with a significant message. And so what I'm really doing is taking that poem, because I believe we all have a story behind our story, and I'm asking, what does that poem have to teach us? And then I'm inviting people to become a pineapple person. How do you become a pineapple person? How do you stand up straight? What happens when you put down your phone or quit looking beyond people and literally look people in the eye, listen to them, pay attention? It changes everything. And I think it allows the world to have more good news, more kindness. Kindness costs nothing. Sweetness within you will shine throughout you. It will come across in your words, in your written word, in your spoken word, in your keyboard, in your phone calls, in your encounters with somebody as a cashier. And so this book tells you the stories of what happened when I decided to fully live as a pineapple person. And then many people say, Annie, you are lemons to lemonade. Oh, and the pineapple principle, my recommendation, if you want to learn before you buy this book, is my TEDx is free, and it's called Lessons from a Pineapple. And it is just shows you why I'm so passionate about it. And what's funny is sometimes people say, do you have an acting career? No, but I'm passionate. And when I'm passionate, it comes out very emotional and energetic. Then people call me, Annie, you're lemons to lemonade. You took what was messy and you made it beautiful. And I always say I needed a lot more than sugar and water to become who I am. And one of the things I love to do is bake, and I love baking banana bread. So I said, what if we take a banana bread recipe, use it as an analogy of each ingredient, and remind people that bananas get bruised, and we have 2 choices. We can throw them out, or we can mix them with ingredients, give them some heat, and wait over time, and they will turn into something sweet and beautiful like banana bread. And I think it's true as much of bananas as it is of people. And so this book is an analogy and a story, or a part of a story of my journey to believing I was bruised and to taking everything that I needed and doing all the work to become beautiful. And I don't mean that in any arrogant way, but rather in a hopeful way of whatever you're going through, whatever feels bruised or broken in your life, that given the right ingredients and the right time, from therapy to music to movement to sunshine to time, you can turn it into something beautiful as well. So this is a sweet little book. And these are books in a series. I have a series called Life Lessons from Fruit Books. And we have started on the avocado book. We've started on the watermelon book, the fruits of the spirit, the apple. And so more books are coming. And I will get to that in just a moment. Then this is my seventh book, the ABCs of Speaking Success. And I wrote this because I am a professional speaker and I love to teach people how to go from free to fee. And I wrote this book because so many people would ask me, what have you done, Annie? What did you do? What could I do? How can I do it? And I do coach individuals and I do lead classes and groups on that sometimes, but not all the time due to my travel and speaking schedule. But I was like, I made a video series on YouTube on the ABCs of Speaking Success. And I decided, what if I wrote those into a book? And sometimes I travel around to other National Speakers Association chapters and teach that. But I was the president of the National Speakers Association in Minnesota. And then I facilitated the academy for 2 years. And then I was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I thought, let's put it in a book. There's so many people out there that want to be speakers. They want to be writers and they don't know where to start. And so this is literally going through the ABCs and just giving you a tip based on a letter of the day and moving on from that. So ABCs of Speaking Success is to build confidence, connection, and community by using your words. So that can be for help you with your interviews, help you with friendships, or help you move from a public speaker or no speaker at all to a professional speaker. So there's tips in here to apply right away, and it will just help you communicate better. And I know that what used to be a soft skill are now more essential, and that includes communication and connection that lots of people struggle with. So that's the ABCs of Speaking Success. These are a video series, but they're also a book and easy to read and gives you tips right away. And then my 8th book came out in August, and this was inspired by surviving Hurricane Ian, Choose to Soar. And I was thinking about this book the other day and asking myself, why is it hard for me to promote? Not that I haven't talked about it and I'm excited about it, but I can't quite articulate like it can be the exception, the value of it yet. And partially I don't have enough feedback. I'm waiting for more reviews on Amazon. And, some people have said it's really heavy and they have to read it in bite-sized pieces. And I would agree. And I would say, take it in bite-sized pieces, process it, apply it to your own life. Yes, read it as a story, but also, go through the process of asking yourself, what storm am I in and how can I get better through my own storm? And how can I give myself grace in the midst of it? And how can I be okay not being okay, even if I'm safe and it's a slow process and we're all different processors and journey. But Choose to Soar is the book that's about disruption. It's about change and disruption in your professional life, in your business, in your personal life, in the literal life of hurricanes to tornadoes. But this book also has been very well received. And so I've had the opportunity to speak about it a lot. And I include in this book kind of my H3 cultures. So Choose to Soar and H3 cultures, kind of bringing those together, which is another presentation. And it's really about staying hopeful, healthy, and happy in the hard stuff in life, in the hurting world. How do we find hope, health, and happiness when we are disrupted in our life, when we are not going through an interruption, but a disruption that kind of throws us off our game? And whether that's a layoff, which I'm hearing a lot of those lately, or it's COVID, or it's a divorce, or a death, or a diagnosis, whatever it is, or a tornado or a hurricane, how do we process through that? And my goal is that I'm not telling you, that I'm showing you, and that you don't feel so alone, and that I give you bite-sized pieces to process. So that's Choose to Soar that came out in August. And then since then, I had a number of requests for a workbook to go with it. And so like Be the Exception, Choose to Soar is now a workbook as well. So it can be a keynote, it can be a half day, full day, or 3-day retreat. This month, I will be taking this workbook and the book and turning it into my second online course, because some people like to learn at their own speed, and I want to be able to offer what my audience and clients ask for. So this will become that. My ninth book, which is only released on Kindle so far, came out this week, and it is called How to Be a Pineapple Person, 52 Weeks to Living Out a Pineapple Person Life. And so it's just a tip. Like if you're like, hey, Annie, I'm in board. I want to be a pineapple person with you. It's just a tip a week. One thing that you can think about and implement each week to stand up a little straighter, look people in the eye a little better, have better conversations, be more encouraging, be sweeter, value yourself, value other people. And it just gives you tips and ideas on how to do that. 52 weeks, 52 ideas and suggestions. So that book's on Kindle, and hopefully by the mid next week, if not by the end of today, it will be on paperback as well. But really, I'm just always thinking about how can I serve with my written and spoken word. And I have a number of other books in the fruit series, which ideally will be a basket someday that you can buy instead of a fruit or a flower basket, a basket of life lessons from fruit. And then I have my adoption book that I started a year and a half ago, and then the storm hit. And that one is three to the many sides of adoption. So it's birth parents sharing their stories, it's adoptive parents sharing their stories, and it's adoptees sharing their stories. And the desire behind that book is to make adoption a healing word, a hopeful word, not a hurtful word, not an abandonment word, a word of abundant love, not lacking in love. And whatever the circumstances that bring those three people into the triad of birth parent, adoptee, adoptor, there can be a lot of hurt behind that. And my desire as a birth mom and as a sister of a new sister in my life from my mom's adoption, and my husband adopting our oldest son from me being a single mom, adoption has been part of every element of my life and my relationships. And so it's important for me to bring love and hope into that. And so I'm always looking for contributors. So if you're a listener and you have an adoption story, I would love to hear it. That book will get finished this year. I don't know when. The last update in my life that I haven't openly shared and don't think yet is that January 1st, I went back to college. I was not able to, I got my GED, and I did some college, but as a young mom and survivor of many things, I wasn't able to focus on that. So I started in January, and my goal is to have not only my bachelor's, but my master's degree by the end of next year. So slowly but surely plugging away with that as I run my business, speak all over the world, and write. But I am young at heart, if not young in age, and highly driven to do and make the most of this brief life that we get. So I use written and spoken word every day to inspire and encourage people. So I hope this helped you understand a little more about what I do and why I do it. And I hope if you have a book within you, you will write it. You will share your stories, teach your lessons, because it will allow you and your reader, if you do it right, to live your dreams. So I'm Annie Meehan, and I would love the opportunity for you to read one of my books and then write a review on Amazon is so greatly appreciated, because those reviews lead to more sales, more credibility, and people feeling safe and investing in my written work. So thank you to all of you that have already supported me, tens of thousands of people. I am so grateful. And thank you to those that will check it out and consider. You can buy on my website or Amazon, but I know Amazon's easier for a lot of people. Have an amazing afternoon, a wonderful weekend, and thank you for tuning in. Take care.